On this site you see me using traditional wood carving tools almost all the time, but there are other tools that carvers commonly use, and in this series I'm going to show you a few of these. I'm going to start with the chisel, the bench chisel, then I'm going to talk about the plane, the spoke shave and the scraper. So let's start with the chisel. Actually, I want to start by telling you a very short story. When I began carving, I visited the master carver who first showed me how to sharpen carving tools. I'd no experience of chisels of any sort before that. He showed me how to sharpen a carving tool, carving gouge like this, in fact this very one. I came home and I needed to make a bench, and for a bench to make the mortise joints I needed a bench chisel, a carpentry chisel. So I got hold of one of those, I can't remember where from, but I was so full of myself I thought I knew I could sharpen it better. I was going to sharpen it like a carver would sharpen chisels, because I was really into that. And of course I did, and it was absolutely useless for what I wanted to do. And it made me realise that carpentry chisels, the bench chisels, the normal woodworking chisels, are a completely different species to wood carving chisels. They are sharpened differently, they do different jobs, they behave in a completely different way, and you need to understand that, and I understood it the hard way. So you don't have to go through the hard task of finding that out. I'm going to tell you now, the two are separate ventures, and how you sharpen your carving tools, the profiles and so on, that's one thing. How we sharpen these tools is another. So let me just tell you now exactly what we're looking for and how I go about sharpening my bench chisel. This is a typical carving gouge that I use. It's got a bevel on one side, the main bevel, and a secondary inner bevel on the other side. So it's got two bevels. The carver's chisel also has two bevels, and the centre of the steel is right down the centre of the blade, so it's a symmetrical tool. Now if you contrast that to your carpentry chisel, your bench chisel like this, is quite a big one. It only has one bevel, which is on this side. The other side here is completely flat. This is flat with a bevel. So if I was to use this model, and this is just a piece of wood to show you what this looks like in profile. So if we were looking at this here blown up, this is what you'd see. Here's the metal of the blade. How I sharpen it is I put a hollow in here. This is ground in with the grinding wheel. So that goes on the grinding wheel first of all and is ground in, and then from this point, the heel, through to this edge here, I put it onto a stone and sharpen it. So I keep this face flat, this metal face flat. I have a hollow ground here, and I have two finishing bevels just there. And what that does is it cuts down all the friction in here. So as this cuts through the wood, there's nothing to stop it, and nothing that binds it, so it cuts through very easily. So this is the approach. We're going to grind this off, and then we're going to set this into two finishing bevels. The angle we're looking for here is around 25 degrees, 30 degrees. That's 90, that's 45, splitting it, that's 22, so a bit up. So we're looking for an angle somewhere like that ultimately on this tool. With a high-speed grinding wheel, don't forget to dip it in water frequently and not let the blade get hot or turn blue. I'm going to offer it up to the grinding wheel like so and hollow out that so that the shape of this wheel creates the hollow of that bevel. I'm going to keep looking at the scratch marks in here, and we're going to hollow from the heel to the edge right across. I'm trying to keep it nice and uniform. So there's the blade. I've actually stopped short just of the edge, but it's now all hollow ground through. I can feel that hollow grind. So from here we go to the bench stones, a fine bench stone. This is my normal translucent Arkansas bench stone, but you can use any really fine bench stone. Oil. Then I place the blade bevel down at the cutting angle, and I basically move my body backwards and forwards just like I did when I sharpened a lettering carving chisel, like so. And so we're sharpening from the heel to the edge across, leaving the hollow ground, and eventually what will happen is you'll feel a burr. Now the burr is like the sharp edge turned over. So as soon as you begin to feel that, you turn the tool back onto the flat side, onto the edge of the stone, like this. Make sure it's flat, and rub it like this. Don't tip it on the flat face to create any sort of bevel. This face has to be truly flat, so rub it like this to take the burr off. So sharpening like so. Turn it over, take the burr off. And when it gets a little dull, you go back to the stone. You do a couple of touches like this, check for the burr. Take that off. And then test it in a piece of wood. And it should be at least as sharp as your carving tools. So when you want to eventually reshape this, you go back to the grinding wheel, create more of the inside bevel, the inside hollow, then back to the stone, and that's how you keep touching it up. You can strop it like a carving chisel if you want, but that should be plenty good enough to do all your joints and anything flat. I use a bench chisel like this whenever I need to make a truly flat plane or flat face, such as joints when I'm making my bench. And here's an example of a carving that of a koi carp that had fins attached to the body at the back with a sort of dovetail joints, and I used the chisel to create not only the mortise type part of the joint, but also the tenon, the dovetail part as well, and that fixed the fin very securely in place.